As a member of wrestling royalty myself, I have a particular affinity for WWE's King of the Ring. First introduced in 1985, there have been 20 kings to date, and as with all WWE tropes, some of them have been far better than others. Becoming king can be a huge opportunity for a burgeoning superstar to grab the brass ring, but kings of the past haven't always been put in the position to do that. Others, on the other hand, took their scepter and smashed the glass ceiling with it on the way to becoming some of the biggest names in the business. As WWE have revived the King of the Ring concept, let's look back at which kings we want to make statues of and which ones we'd have hanged, drawn, and quartered. I am your Royal Highness Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every WWE King of the Ring winner ranked from worst to best. Thou art welcome to join us. Number 20, Mabel. By default, the absolute worst King of the Ring in WWE history, Mabel's reign is often pointed at as being the lowest point of one of the company's most creatively bankrupt periods. The former Men on a Mission man gained possession of the crown after beating The Undertaker and then Savio Vega in 2 horrible matches. We would have been subject to a third Mabel masterclass had Karma and Shawn Michaels not gone to a time limit draw in their quarter-final match, allowing the big man a bye and a shorter path to the final. Obviously, it was a hoot watching the poor schmucks tasked with carrying the super heavyweight to the ring almost buckle under the pressure, but it wasn't so enjoyable watching Mabel, actually wrestle and talk and stuff. His tournament triumph earned him a WWE title match against Diesel in the main event of SummerSlam, which he lost despite Vince McMahon actually considering making him the new champ. Of the others in the tournament that year, any one of Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, or Yokozuna would have been fine kings. Hell, give it a Mantar for all I care. Number 19, Tito Santana. In theory, Tito Santana should have been a great king. He was a great worker, dependable, likable, and probably could have done some really good things with the gimmick. Unfortunately, this was back when the King of the Ring tournament was pretty much a house show gimmick designed to beef up ticket sales once a year, and it was a crapshoot as to whether WWE would actually do anything with the winner or not. Santana beat Bad News Brown, the Warlord, Akeem, and finally former Strikeforce partner Rick the Model Martel in the final on a non-televised live event in 1989. From there, he never really pushed on, basically occupying the same spot he always had, losing the finals of an Intercontinental title tournament to Mr. Perfect. He eventually went on a sabbatical, and when he returned, was a gosh darned bullfighter. Ole! Okay. Number 18, Don Morocco. Don Morocco has the distinction of being the first ever King of the Ring tournament winner. And as you might guess by his low positioning on this list, he didn't do a whole hell of a lot with that distinction. As mentioned before, the early kings weren't exactly pushed and often didn't embrace royalty as part of their gimmick. Morocco became king by beating Junkyard Dog, Les Thornton, Pedro Morales, and the Iron Sheik at a 1985 stadium show. So was any of it any good? Well, you would have to ask those in the stadium that night, but given the lineup of talent there, I can't see how it could be too thrilling. Big Don lands at number 18 because he was better than Mabel by default, and more memorable than Tito because he was the first. Number 17, Billy Gunn. Bless WWE, they tried and tried and tried again to make Billy Gunn a fully fledged single star over the years, but it just never quite worked. He'd been a member of the wildly popular New Age Outlaws and D-Generation X, which were good spots to have, but WWE always saw the tall, muscular, and talented Gunn as a potential future WWE champion. The 1999 King of the Ring tournament told the story of the dissension of DX, and after defeating fellow flop Viscera, another former king, Ken Shamrock, and then Kane, Billy beat X-Pac in the final. None of the matches were memorable, and Gunn's victory felt rather flat. But oh, it would get so much worse when King Ass promptly met with The Rock, who completely dismantled him both on the microphone and in the ring, rechristening him Billy Bitchcakes before shoving his face into a homely lady's ass and sending him back running to Road Dogg in the mid-card. 2 years later, King Edge vowed to not Billy Gunn, aka completely screw up, his tournament win. Ouch. Number 16, Ted DiBiase. Ted DiBiase as King of the Ring is simply put a money idea. Because he was the $1 million man, you see? You get it? Yeah, you get it. Right, so Ted was a good king and certainly deserving of the honor. In fact, it was really his first significant accomplishment in WWE, but as was the case in those early days, the tournament was simply for the benefit of those in the arena that night. DiBiase beat Brutus Beefcake, Ken Patera, and paid off Ron Bass before unseating 1987 King of the Ring winner Randy Savage in the final via countout. And what did he get for his efforts? A main event run with Hogan? WWE title shot on pay-per-view? Nah, he got a feud with Hercules. Yep, Hercules. Number 15, William Regal. The relatively low positioning of this one might shock you, because the idea of William Regal becoming King of the Ring and receiving a big push on the back of it should have been fantastic. If anyone has ever suited being king, it's the villainous Brit who had spent much of his time bigging up his homeland and scolding Americans for their lack of etiquette. Hell, he even knew the Duchess of Queensberry, for goodness sake. Come April 2008, Regal was the interim Raw general manager and used his powers to book himself against Hornswoggle in the quarterfinals. A semi-final meeting with old rival Finlay looked a lot tougher on paper, but Regal again prevailed with relative ease, setting up a final with CM Punk. Blackpool's finest overcame the straight-edge superstar in a short but surly bout via submission, becoming the first person from the United Kingdom to be crowned king. He then began a feud with Mr. Kennedy before, just a month after his big King of the Ring win, our man was popped by the WWE wellness policy for the second time and forced to serve a 60-day suspension. That completely derailed his momentum, and though he still claimed to be king upon his return, the moment had well and truly passed. Number 14, Baron Corbin. The King of the Ring returned after a 4-year hiatus in 2019 with a 16-man dual-brand television tournament designed to showcase some of WWE's best and brightest young talents. And Baron Corbin. I'm kidding, no disrespect to the big banter merchant, but the Lone Wolf was probably a good 2/3 of the way down the list of people fans would have liked to have seen win, well behind Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, Cesaro, Andrade, and, well, there were quite a few, okay? But Baron got the nod, beating The Miz, Cedric Alexander, Joe and Ricochet in a triple threat match before seeing off Chad Gable in the final. The tournament was fine, but being stretched over a month's worth of TV hurt it and made it feel rather small time. The matches themselves were mostly decent, and Corbin, to his credit, adopted the king persona from the off, but it seemed to go on for an age, and nobody was too upset when Shinsuke Nakamura beat him for the crown and forced a gimmick change. Number 13, Bad News Barrett. The 2015 King of the Ring was the first for 5 years, and the first one since 2002 to have its own dedicated show. It was a smaller field, but it featured a good mix of established stars and those looking to have their moments and break out. Wade Barrett was somewhere in the middle, as he'd been a featured part of the show for about 5 years, but creative had blown hot and cold with him, something that wasn't helped by some ill-timed injuries. Looking to get back on track and have something to sink his teeth into, Wade beat Dolph Ziggler and R-Truth before bullhammering his way beyond Neville in the final. Barrett was a decent king and had some good matches with Neville and others in the aftermath, but his move to the League of Nations pushed him more to the background, and he decided to commit treason and leave WWE rather than rule over the Raw roster. Number 12, Ken Shamrock. In mid-1998, WWE were riding a serious wave of momentum as the Attitude Era came into full flow and everyone on the card was getting over. You had the tippy-top guys like Austin, Mankind and Undertaker, but just beneath them, an up-and-coming crop that included The Rock and Triple H that were fast approaching the main event scene. The same could have been said for Ken Shamrock, the former UFC standout who had brought a new style and aura to WWE a year earlier. The world's most dangerous man was one of the favourites to win the 1998 King of the Ring, and it was hardly a surprise when he beat Kama Mustafa, Mark Henry and Jeff Jarrett to book his place in the final opposite the Great One. Despite having an entertaining feud with Owen Hart following the win, Ken never quite broke through the glass ceiling in the way that The Rock or Hunter did. Of course, Shamrock's King of the Ring win was also completely overshadowed on the night by Mick Foley's breathtaking one-man stunt show. It's crazy to think, but just a little over a year after being crowned king, Ken left WWE in order to return to MMA. Number 11, Sheamus. The 2010 WWE roster was one in transition, as evidenced by the mix of mostly new talent who were a part of that year's King of the Ring. It was a dual-brand affair with qualifiers followed by quarters, semis, and a final across televised shows, and realistically any one of Drew McIntyre, Sheamus, Cody Rhodes, Daniel Bryan, John Morrison, Jack Swagger, or Kofi Kingston could have walked away as king. WWE opted to give it to the Celtic Warrior, a former two-time WWE champion in his own right at the time, and somebody who was a unique choice for king given his Irish heritage. Do they even have kings in Ireland? I thought the top postman was in charge or something. Anyway, Sheamus beat R-Truth and Kofi before getting a bye to the finals where he bro-kicked the handsome face off of Jomo. The Irish curse really started coming into his own, especially on promos during this time, and he caught the eye in his dashing green robe. He would reign as king for 5 years before being superseded by Wade Barrett. Number 10, Harley Race. Back in the day, whenever WWE would hire a sports entertainer who'd had a successful career elsewhere, they didn't want to acknowledge it, opting instead to create a new persona for them. And that goes for legendary former NWA champions too, as handsome Harley Race discovered when he made the move up north in 1986. Sorry, handsome Harley Race? Did he get that nickname before he decided to get slammed around for a living and started drinking whiskey for breakfast, or... Sorry, anyway, Tough Guy Race became King of the Ring on a house show by beating George Steele, Billy Jack Haynes, and Pedro Morales, receiving a bye in the quarters. A great heel, Harley really played up the King gimmick on television, leading to feuds with Junkyard Dog and even Hulk Hogan, before injury sadly cut short his run. Unable to lord over WWE as he convalesced, Race's manager Bobby Heenan abdicated the throne to a member of his Heenan family stable, Haku. And so Haku became the first king to earn the title without winning the tournament, and the first to lose the crown to Jim Duggan. Of course, if the whole thing were a shoot, Haku would be king of the world until the end of time. Number 9, Triple H. Had Hunter Hearst Helmsley not decided to murder kayfabe in Madison Square Garden by joining in with the Click's curtain call, he would have won the King of the Ring a year earlier than he did. But he did the crime against kayfabe, and so he had to do the time, stepping aside while Steve Austin won the tournament instead. That turned out quite well for old Stone Cold, or so I've heard. Anyway, 1997 was Triple H's turn, and truth be told, he was probably in a much better position to win it than he would have been a year prior. There was an interesting story in the first round, as Helmsley actually lost to Ahmed Johnson via disqualification, but threatened to sue WWE management by claiming he hadn't been told that he could be eliminated via DQ. And so he filled in for an injured Vader and beat Crush before downing Johnson and then Mankind to win the tournament. Interestingly, Paul Levesque supposedly hated wearing the King garb so much that he broke a couple of crowns and lost a few staffs in order to avoid wearing it. The King of the Ring win and resultant feud with Mankind really established Triple H as a star, and it wasn't too long after this that he helped form DX with Shawn Michaels. Number 8, Edge. The 2001 King of the Ring field was stacked, full of popular performers that could have easily been booked to win it. Why not one of Matt or Jeff Hardy, or Tajiri, or what about him? What about Raven? In the end, it came down to Edge, Christian, Rhino, and the year 2000's King of the Ring, Kurt Angle, who was looking to repeat the feat. The Olympic hero fell at the final hurdle, however, losing to Edge thanks to interference from Shane McMahon. And really, the former tag team and Intercontinental champion was the perfect choice for King. He took his trophy with him everywhere, made Billy Gunn look like an ass man, and also started having issues with Christian, who was becoming increasingly jealous of his partner's singles success. That would culminate in Captain Charisma smashing the trophy over his kayfabe brother's head, setting up a program between the two. Being made king was another sign that WWE were high on Edge and had plans to elevate him beyond the mid-card, which they successfully did over the course of the next year or so. Number 7, Brock Lesnar. The 2002 King of the Ring was the first of the brand split era, taking place at a time when WWE were keen to make new stars. One star they were intent on making was Brock Lesnar, who had arrived on the main roster and promptly set about dismantling anyone who got in his way, amassing a huge winning streak and looking pretty damn impressive in the process. The next big thing would keep his perfect record intact throughout the tournament, beating Bubba Dudley and Booker T in televised tournament matches, before beating Test and then RVD on the pay-per-view. pay-per-view. Really, Brock was the choice in 2002, especially when the winner was to receive a WWE title match in the main event of SummerSlam a couple of months later. If you're going for logic and believability, Lesnar was the guy. Plus, I mean, the bloke just bloody loves a tournament, NCAA Division Heavyweight Champion and all that. The only real downside is that we didn't get to see him wearing a cape. I would have liked that. I really would. Number 6, Owen Hart. Tired of being in the shadow of Big Brother Bret, Owen Hart kicked the Hitman's leg out of his leg, beat him at WrestleMania, and sought to do what the Hitman had done the year prior by winning the 1994 King of the Ring. The Rocket had a clear and obvious chip on his shoulder as he got past Doink the Clown, Tatanka, giving the Native American only his second on-screen pinfall loss in 2 years, 1-2-3 Kid, and Razor Ramon to become the King of Hearts. Like Bret, he had beaten a series of diverse opponents en route to the throne and really established himself as a breakout star in the process. His performance against Kid in particular made him look like a killer, and at the end of the night, he was ready to step up and challenge the excellence of execution for the WWE title. While Owen never won the big one, his King of the Ring victory set him up nicely for that main event run, leading to some predictably excellent matches, the best of which took place inside a cage at SummerSlam. It may not have been as impressive as being a 2-time Slammy Award winner, but being King suited Owen down to the ground, and he made the most of the opportunity. Number 5, Kurt Angle. Holy gold medals, folks. The 2000 King of the Ring was a rare mammoth 32-person field. That is 5 rounds, with the first 2 taking place on television and the final 3 happening on the pay-per-view portion of proceedings. Now, who can we pick to go 5 rounds and win the whole bloody thing? Oh yeah, how about the guy that won a pretty famous wrestling tournament with a broken freaking neck? Kurt Angle had only been on television for about 6 months by the time King of the Ring started, but he had already been a European and Intercontinental Champion and was clearly picking up the business at record speed. Though the roster was deeper than ever at that point, Angle really stood out as the premier choice here. He beat Bradshaw, Bubba, Chris Jericho, and Crash Holly before overcoming Rikishi in the final. Naturally, Angle gloated and celebrated like a madman afterwards and began to dress in the appropriate garb. Shortly after his win, Angle found himself in the main event scene working with The Undertaker before getting into a love triangle with Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. While reigning as king, Angle won the WWE title for the first time, accomplishing the feat only 11 months into his run. Number 4, Booker T. All hail King Booker! All hail King Booker! All hail King Booker! Alright, so maybe I don't have the hype man abilities of William Regal, but if I see a picture of Booker T in crown and cape, I am going to have to ask you to all hail King Booker! Booker T was somewhat lost in the shuffle around the time of WrestleMania 22 in 2006, having dropped the US title and becoming embroiled in a feud with the Boogeyman. It was a step down for someone who really should have been in the world title mix, but thankfully the King of the Ring presented him an opportunity to get his rightful place at the top of the card. The first King of the Ring for 4 years, the 06 version was a SmackDown exclusive affair, comprised of just 8 superstars and with quarters and semis taking place on TV. With fewer competitors, however, the caliber was rather high, with Booker being joined by Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, Matt Hardy, Chris Benoit, Finlay, Mark Henry, and Bobby Lashley. Booker beat Hardy before an injury to former King Kurt gave him a bye to the finals, where he beat Lashley at Judgment Day. Embracing the gimmick like no other in history, Booker really began to believe that he was a king, adopting the tone and tenor of royalty and having his own King's Court featuring Queen Sharmell and Sirs Regal and Finlay. He was a riot in the role, and it led to instant success as he beat Rey Mysterio for the World Heavyweight title just 2 months after his coronation. Number 3, Steve Austin. As mentioned earlier, the 1996 King of the Ring winner was originally going to be Hunter Hearst Helmsley before the MSG curtain call and the killing of kayfabe. The 16-man field was loaded with other suitable choices, and it eventually came down to an eclectic final 4 of Mark Merrow, Vader, Jake Roberts, and Steve Austin. On the night, Stone Cold beat the Wild Man in a cracking semi-final, but got injured in the process and needed a trip to the emergency room to get sewn up. Far from a negative situation, it actually played into Austin's hands as he got back just before his final with the Snake. Moments before walking to the ring, Michael Hayes informed the Texas Rattlesnake that Jake had cut a religious-themed promo on him beforehand. And that was all Austin needed to hear, as after his routine victory to become king, he cut what is arguably the most iconic promo in wrestling history. The Austin 316 speech did more for his career than any match ever could, and it couldn't have happened without the unique circumstances of the King of the Ring pay-per-view. Number 2, Randy Savage. Randy Savage's case is a curious one, as he won the tournament in 1987 but didn't fully adopt the gimmick of being Macho King until 2 years later. Once again, the tournament was a special one-off house show, with Macho Man beating Nikolai Volkov, Jim Brunzell, Dangerous Danny Davis, and finally King Kong Bundy for the crown. Sounds like a long night at the office for Randy, that one does. Anyway, he was the King of the Ring winner, but not much was made of it on television, as he was then in the midst of a babyface turn and was preoccupied with winning back the Intercontinental title from the Honky Tonk Man, which he never did, but found himself forming the Mega Powers and winning the WWE title at WrestleMania instead. So take that, you fifth-rate Elvis impersonator. A couple of years after, however, Savage beat Jim Duggan, who, remember, had beaten Haku, who, remember, had been made a king by Bobby Heenan in the absence of Harley Race. And so Savage became the Macho King, which was made official with an in-ring coronation hosted by the Genius, where Ted DiBiase gifted him an expensive scepter. Savage was perfect as the Macho King, as he, alongside sensational Queen Sherry, looked and played the part as well as anyone, having a memorable feud with commoners Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire. Savage was the Macho King up until his retirement match loss to the Ultimate Warrior at WrestleMania 7, after which he became the Macho House Husband. Number 1, Bret Hart. The best king there is, the best king there was, and probably the best king there ever will be, unless WWE does the right thing and brings back Mojo Rawley. Bret Hart is the only man to have won the King of the Ring tournament twice. The first instance took place at a 1991 house show. The Hitman was a star on the rise at the time and reigning as Intercontinental Champion, so it wasn't a shock to see him beat Libertine's frontman Pete Doherty? Oh no, sorry, that's Pete Doherty, the enhancement talent, who was subbing in for the Texas Tornado and worked as the Duke of Dorchester. My mistake. Anyway, Bret also beat Skinner before receiving a bye to the finals, where he put away Erwin R. Shyster. The pink and black attack struck again at the very next King of the Ring, though this one took place 2 years later and was presented live on pay-per-view for the first time. On the night, Bret took on and outlasted Razor Ramon, Mr. Perfect, and Bam Bam Bigelow in 3 excellent and very different matches. Bret really put a shift in and put over the tournament properly in its first true public showing. A knackered Hart was victorious and ready for his coronation when Jerry Lawler interrupted, claiming to be the one true king of wrestling, before blasting Bret with a scepter as the show went off the air. Look, if we're gonna get Lawler put in prison for something, I'm going to need someone to look up the statute of limitations on attempted regicide. Thank you.